Hi, everybody. My name's Nick French. I'm a senior here at SDSU. I am a communication studies major and a health communications minor. I'm excited to be presenting to you today my presentation, which is engaging the narrative paradigm to supercharge a Washington, D.C. think tank's cross-cultural storytelling. The organization that I'm working with is PPI, or the Progressive Policy Institute. I want to give a special thanks to Carter Christensen, who has been my touch point with PPI. He is the digital communications director. He performed an interview with me and provided advice along the way. So definitely want to give a shout out to you, Carter. Here's what we have coming ahead. I will talk about our pain points that I found from our interview. I'll explore the impetus behind that. I'll explore the theory that I'm using to create some solutions and hopefully draw some implications and applications in order to improve the overall organizational effectiveness and messaging that Carter works with on the daily basis. So without further ado, let's get started. Like I just previously mentioned, this is Carter Christensen. He's the Digital Comms Director at PPI. Let me just tell you a little bit about PPI before I talk about how I interacted with Carter and to get some pain points. PPI is radically pragmatic. First and foremost, they are a progressive policy think tank and institute. However, they consider themselves very research focused. And so Carter's job is to take this research and translate it into something digestible that he can then send to his stakeholders, maybe at the Capitol, maybe local leaders, maybe economic leaders. So depending on the day, he'll have different jobs. Now, what I wanted to do was isolate a couple of pain points, and the best way to do this was via an interview. What I did was I created 6 questions ranging from daily tasks to hierarchy. I asked some organizational communication structures about how his emotions were valued in the workplace, but through this interview, I was able to really focus on 2 main pain points that I feel like I'm most equipped to help him with. So let's explore those. We'll just jump right in here. From my analysis of the interview questions that I had with Carter, I extracted 2 main pain points that I felt I was most equipped to help him with. The first one being, how do we responsibly craft messaging surrounding current political topics? And the second, how can we communicate these messages to a diverse audience of stakeholders? Both of these questions have to do with the rising heterogeneity and the rising diversity of our teams and our audiences. It's important to craft responsible messages because the information that PPI would like to send out needs to be digestible and it needs to be understood in a topical and timely way. And so being able to understand the zeitgeist of the times and have them work with your information is a really big deal, and I'd love to help Carter do that. Let's examine a little bit of why we're even doing this in the first place, though. It's important that we kind of examine why we're doing this. Why even look for pain points? Why is the work that PPI does so crucial? I have here for you a little graphic from 538 by Nate Silver. It says the House is more polarized than ever, and I think even without this graphic, we can all attest to the kind of political animosity and polarization that the American people have on our hands. This is not a new trend, however, it's been exacerbated by recent events, and so in that light, we have PPI, which is solely research focused and tries to make sense of all of these really hot button issues that are causing such great divides. Carter's integral role of taking this information and crafting messages, which are then relayed to various stakeholders, is truly at the heart of what PPI does and is extremely necessary in order to move past some of this polarization. So we really do see the effects of Carter's work from a day to day if we want to move past any of this gridlock here. Now that we've identified some of the pain points, the theory that I felt most matched that is the narrative paradigm by Walter Fisher. He came up with this in the 80s, and there have been many other works that try and update it to modern standards, which I'll share in just a moment. But here's really the heart of this theory is that humans are natural storytellers. We look back into the annals of history that people tell stories in order to communicate information and values at the same time. And because stories are so memorable, they're able to be a mirror and also a window into advancing thought and into having ideas creatively, which fits in perfectly into PPI's mission and exactly what Carter's trying to reach. As an extension of Walter Fisher's narrative paradigm, I'd like to introduce to you the storytelling model of organizational communication. It's putting the narrative paradigm, which is more of a concept, into action. Barker and Gower in 2010 put together this model because they wanted to acknowledge that we live in a society that promotes and is steadily working toward heterogeneity and diversity, which is a wonderful thing. And so, if we take storytelling, pass it through a world where diversity is a mainstay, what happens to it? Well, it undergoes social exchange theory, and it undergoes an exchange where people communicate and talk about the stories, then inflect their own values upon it, therefore perhaps acting upon their values and listening to the information and being moved by it, therefore creating results for the organization. This flow is important for PPI because that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to disseminate their information in a way that touches the hearts of many different kinds of people, therefore hoping to have them create action, whether it be in Congress, whether it be in their communities. That's really what PPI is trying to do. So I think this model fits perfectly with their mission. After examining the various methods that storytelling models can help organizations, I thought about the way that we can help Carter address his pain points of trying to craft responsible messages for a wide variety of people. The storytelling model leads us to three implications. The first one is that this model addresses needs, particularly the needs for workplace diversity, the needs for a very fast global world. As the workplace digitizes, there's less and less time for people to get acquainted with their teams, meaning that we need to communicate in a way that's more effective. The storytelling model is that way. It's also a cross-cultural tool, and not only is it cross-cultural, it's cross time periods. Like I mentioned before, people have been using stories for centuries to communicate their values. And so this kind of storytelling can cross barriers such as institutional barriers and language barriers, and hopefully be a really timeless way to communicate about issues that people are impassioned about. Um, as a benefit to PPI also believe that the storytelling model will be able to strengthen the institutional memory and to strengthen the mission of PPI within itself, instead of a lot of tiny little separate entities working within this organization. I'd like to think that by telling stories, like how many times have we heard the phrase, let's get our stories straight, right? When people start sharing a story and are really truly on the same page, they're able to stick to their mission and stick to their guns, which I think is of extraordinary value, especially if you work in politics, especially in a Washington, D.C. think tank kind of a situation. So, as I said before, it's both a window and a mirror. And in this case, being a mirror is a really strong tool for PPI because then they'll be able to see what they're really working for in the future. I'm sure storytelling isn't a new concept to you, but hopefully we can take a step back even from PPI here and learn something of how to improve our own storytelling in order to responsibly craft messages for a more diverse audience. The first thing here is, and the thing I want you to walk away with today, is to remember that the way stories are told affects how well the story is received and acted on, right? What we want is action derived from the story, meaning that we have to take a lot of time and be strategic about the way we craft our stories. We need to do our research. Some of the research I recommend is going back and thinking about the stories that work well. Think about, if you want to think about fables, if you want to think about fairy tales, what really sticks out in your memory? Why was that effective? For instance, if you take the Three Little Pigs, what was really effective about it? Well, you have try, fail, try, fail. You're seeing what is working and what isn't working. And so, say you are an organization like PPI, you can use a story where you have try and fail, maybe in a speech, maybe in a press release, that really shows that you have a strong handle on the narrative and you can really dictate the actions or create a scene that will trigger an emotional response for the audience. So, for PPI specifically, by using this kind of theory, I want them to study their organization. I want them to study stories that have worked in the past, and then I want them to adapt and tell them sincerely. I want them to think strategically. I want them to have um, meetings and summits to really think about the kind of stories that they want to tell, not only surrounding issues like gun legislation, issues like women's reproductive rights, issues like LGBTQ plus rights, um, creating stories that aren't necessarily just recapitulations of people's experiences, but what did they learn? Is there a plot to it? Did they fail and get back up again? These are the things that are going to really grip an audience. And so this is the kind of advice that I gave Carter. So, going back to the main pain points that I was able to extract from our conversation with Carter, I actually think we can hit both of these birds with one stone by utilizing Fisher's narrative paradigm, kind of upgraded into the storytelling model of organizational communication. The reason I think this works is because what I'm essentially asking PPI to do is to think strategically about the stories that they might already have, but to create a solid beginning, middle, and end in recognition that the world is extremely diverse and these will be widely received, which will hopefully work in this model to be affected by social exchange theory, therefore having people act upon the stories that they're hearing, creating substantial social change, which is the end mission for PPI. They would like to move past the gridlock, the polarization, into creating some kind of social change. So through the narrative paradigm, through storytelling model, and through the implications and applications that we've driven home today, I believe that I've created a solution for PPI that they will be able to use in the future to build a better organization and to craft more effective messaging. And that brings me to the end of this presentation. Thank you so much for listening here to my 15-minute presentation. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to visit my LinkedIn, any of my socials at Nicholas J. French. You can email me at hello@nickfrench.me. My sources are here at the bottom. I would love to hear about what you do and hear about what kind of good you'd like to create. And however I can be of assistance to you, I'd love to be there on your journey. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.